B34, senior urban planner at top architectural firm in Seattle. Specializing in sustainable development, walkability, and carbon-neutral city design. Master's degree in urban design from Ivy League University. Married to environmental lawyer working on corporate compliance. Live in upscale transit-rich neighborhood with dedicated bike lanes and high walk score. Own a Tesla but rarely use it, prefer commuting by e-bike to show commitment to cause. Had been increasingly radicalized by urbanist Twitter and academic journals about the evils of car dependency. Believed strictly that private vehicle ownership was the root of modern city rot. Saw parking lots as wasted space that should be housing or parks. Viewed anyone opposing bike lanes as car-brained dinosaurs holding back progress. Firm landed massive contract to revitalize the ironworks, historically industrial, working-class district on the city's fringe. Area was characterized by auto repair shops, small logistics warehousings, and generational blue-collar housing. Residents were mostly lower-income service workers, tradespeople, and immigrants. City Council wanted a green beacon project to meet climate goals. I was appointed lead project manager. Saw this as my magnum opus. Chance to prove that radical car-free infrastructure could work anywhere, even in a grit-heavy industrial zone. Drafted the Ironworks Rebirth proposal. Plan called for eliminating 90% of on-street parking, narrowing main arterial roads to one lane to accommodate protected bike superhighways. Closing 3 major intersections to private cars to create pedestrian plazas. Zoning changes to ban new drive-thrus and auto-centric businesses. Presented proposal to firm partners, emphasized the reduction in heat island effect and carbon emissions. Used renderings showing happy people drinking espresso in plazas where trucks currently parked. Senior partner, old-school architect named Marcus, raised eyebrows. Marcus had designed half the city back in the 80s. He asked about logistics for the existing businesses. These aren't tech offices, he said. These are plumbers, welders, delivery hubs. They need vans. Where do the work trucks park? How do supplies get in? Dismissed his concerns as outdated thinking. Explained that logistics hubs would be moved to the perimeter. Last-mile delivery would be handled by cargo bikes and electric pushcarts. Marcus looked skeptical. You expect a welder to carry 500 pounds of steel on a cargo bike in November rain? Argued that businesses would adapt or relocate, making way for green tech startups. That gentrification was a loaded word. We were doing eco-regeneration. Partners approved the plan, mostly because City Hall was offering massive grant money for green initiatives, scheduled the mandatory public town hall meetings in the district, expected some resistance but believed education was the key. If I just explained the data about air quality and property values, they would understand. Arrived at the community center in the Ironworks. Room was packed. Demographics were totally different from my downtown bubble. Men in high-vis vests, tired-looking women in scrubs, elderly residents with walkers. Started my presentation with slides showing global warming stats and Dutch cycling infrastructure. Talked about the 15-minute city concept. Explained how removing their parking spots was actually liberating public space. Room got quiet, but not the good kind of quiet. First question from the floor came from a guy named Kowalski, owner of a mechanic shop for 30 years. He asked where his customers were supposed to put their cars while being fixed if I took away the street spots. Explained that auto repair was a legacy industry and the long-term vision was to transition the neighborhood away from car dependence. So his shop wouldn't be needed in the future. Room erupted. People shouting about their livelihoods. A woman stood up, introduced herself as Maria, home healthcare aide. She visits 5 elderly patients a day in the district. Carries medical equipment. Asked how she serves patients if she can't park near their houses and has to walk 3 blocks from a perimeter hub. Told her that reduced traffic would make the buses faster. She could use the new rapid transit lines. She looked at me like I was an alien. The bus comes once an hour and doesn't go to the side streets, she said. I can't haul an oxygen tank on a bus. Felt frustrated by their lack of vision. They were clinging to convenience over planetary survival. Tried to explain that their temporary inconvenience was necessary for a sustainable future, that they were suffering from status quo bias. Town hall ended in shouting. Security had to escort me to my Tesla. Irony of driving away in a luxury car while telling them to take the bus didn't register at the time. Returned to office, wrote report characterizing opposition as expected reactionary pushback from entrenched auto lobby interests. Did not mention the nurse or the mechanic specifically. City Council passed the plan, eager for the Green City PR. Construction began 3 months later. It was chaos. Main arteries ripped up to install bioswales and bike lanes. Traffic backed up for miles. Delivery trucks for the local factories had nowhere to unload. Started double parking, blocking the single remaining lane. Local news ran stories about the gridlock. I tweeted that transition pains are inevitable and traffic evaporation takes time. 6 months in, the first casualties started. Kowalski's mechanic shop closed. Couldn't operate without parking. 2 diners went under because the lunch rush from the factories couldn't park. I saw this as progress. Legacy businesses clearing out for the inevitable coffee shops and co-working spaces. Startups weren't moving in yet though. The area was a construction zone, and the traffic was too bad. Husband asked me about it over dinner. He'd seen a report on the news about an ambulance getting stuck in the traffic-calm single lane. Asked if the lane narrowing was too aggressive. Got defensive? Emergency vehicles can use the bike lane in emergencies, I said. Drivers just aren't respecting the rules. It's a culture problem, not a design problem. He dropped it but looked worried. 1 year later, Phase 1 opened. Beautiful renderings were now reality. Wide bike lanes, trees, benches. But the bike lanes were empty. The residents of Ironworks didn't bike to work. They drove to industrial jobs in the suburbs or carried tools. Meanwhile, the single-car lane was a constant smog-choked parking lot of idling engines. Air quality in the neighborhood actually got worse due to the idling congestion. I blamed the drivers. If they just switched to transit, the congestion would vanish. Received an email from the city planning director. Subject: Urgent Review Ironworks Project. Summoned to a meeting with the director and the mayor's chief of staff. Expected to receive an award or praise for staying on budget. Walked into the conference room. Mood was icy. Director slid a report across the table. Economic activity in the district down 40%. Emergency response times up by 5 minutes. Critical failure. 3 class action lawsuits filed by business owners claiming the city destroyed their access. And a petition with 5,000 signatures demanding the return of lanes. Defended the project. You can't make an omelet without breaking eggs. We are changing behavior. It takes years. Mayor's chief of staff interrupted. We have a PR nightmare. You built a playground for hipsters in a neighborhood of welders, and the hipsters didn't show up. You designed this for a demographic that doesn't live there. Felt attacked. I designed it for the future demographics. Director spoke up. We need to understand why this failed so badly before we authorize Phase 2. We are suspending your lead on the project. Shocked. I'm the expert here, Director continued. We are bringing in a consultant to audit the social impact. But before that, we have a unique requirement for you if you want to stay on the team. You live in the Heights, right? You commute by e-bike along the river trail? Nodded. Director leaned forward. We want you to live in the Ironworks for 6 weeks. Company has leased a studio apartment in one of the remaining tenements. You will live there. You will commute to our downtown office from there. And here is the kicker, you cannot use your car. You cannot use Uber or Lyft. You must use the infrastructure you designed and the existing public transit, and you have to live on the median budget of an Ironworks resident for those 6 weeks. We'll freeze your accounts and give you a debit card with the stipend. Laughed nervously. Is this a joke? Director wasn't laughing. The residents say you don't understand their reality. Prove them wrong, or you're off the project and maybe out of the firm. Agreed, thinking it would be a fun, urban experiment. I could blog about it, show that car-free living is possible even on a budget. Packed a bag. Moved into the studio on a rainy Tuesday in November. Apartment was small, drafty, single-pane windows. First morning commute. Walked out to use the rapid bus line I touted. It was pouring rain. The bus shelter I designed was sleek, minimalist glass. Looked great in renders. In reality, the high roof didn't stop the wind-blown rain. Soaked within 5 minutes. Bus was 20 minutes late. When it arrived, it was packed. Standing room only. Smelled of wet wool and diesel. Bus got stuck in the traffic caused by my single-lane design. Trip to downtown took 55 minutes. Usually took 15 in my car or 25 on e-bike from my old house. Arrived at work late, wet, and miserable. Colleagues asked how the adventure was going. Put on a brave face. Just teething issues with the transit schedule. Day 4. Needed groceries. Usually, I'd drive to Whole Foods or get delivery. Delivery fee was outside my stipend budget. Checked map. No grocery stores in walking distance. The local bodega had chips and soda, no produce. Nearest supermarket was 2 miles away. Took the bus there, bought 3 bags of groceries. Realized I couldn't carry 3 bags and wait for the bus. Had to walk back partially because bus schedule was off. Plastic bag handle snapped. Milk exploded on the pavement. Stood there in the cold, staring at the spilled milk. A pickup truck drove by, splashed me with water from a pothole. Felt a surge of rage at the driver. Then realized the pothole was there because road maintenance funds had been diverted to the empty bike lane. Week 2. Attempted to use the bike lane. Rode a standard city bike. Not my high-powered e-bike, left at home to simulate local reality. The ironworks is hilly. Without the electric assist, I arrived at work sweating and exhausted. No showers at the office for regular staff, only for executives, which I technically was, but I was playing the role. Felt gross all day. Riding home in the dark, the pedestrian plaza I designed was unlit because we used low-light pollution sensors that malfunctioned. It wasn't a vibrant gathering space. It was a dark, empty void where drug deals were starting to happen because police cruisers couldn't patrol through the bollards. Scared for my safety. Week 3. Laundromat day. Building had no washer. Nearest laundromat was 6 blocks away. Dragged a laundry bag through the rain garden I designed. The bioswale was flooded, overflowing with trash. It wasn't filtering water, it was a muddy pit. Sat in the laundromat. Overheard 2 locals talking. One was an older guy, looked like a contractor, talking about the idiot architect who took away the loading zones. He said he got a $200 ticket for double parking to unload his tools. Said he's moving his business to the next town over. Costing him clients because he can't get to them in time due to traffic. Felt urged to interrupt and explain the long-term benefits. Stayed silent, looked at my hands. They were dry and cracked from the cold and cheap soap. Week 4. The turning point. Woke up with a fever, flu. Needed medicine. No car, too weak to walk to the bus. Called a taxi, breaking rules, but I was sick. Taxi couldn't find the building because the new traffic calming map confused the GPS. Taxi driver called me, yelling that he couldn't turn onto the street because of the bollards. Had to walk 2 blocks in fever to find him. Got in car. Driver went on a rant about the street design. Who designs this garbage? You have to drive 3 miles around to go 2 blocks. I sat in the back, shivering, and said nothing. Realized that if I had an emergency, the ambulance would have the same problem. Thought about Maria, the nurse from the town hall, how she carried oxygen tanks. Realized I had made her life hell. I had designed a city for fit, healthy, childless, wealthy people with time to spare. People like me. I had engineered a hostile environment for the elderly, the sick, the working class, and the disabled, all in the name of equity. Cried in the back of the taxi. Week 6. Experiment over. Returned to my house. The silence of my wealthy neighborhood felt different. The dedicated bike lane outside my house was pristine, cleaned by city trucks that prioritized our tax bracket. Took a long shower. Sat down to write my report. Could have lied. Could have said it was challenging but rewarding. Could have doubled down on behavioral change. Instead, I wrote the truth. Title: Systemic Failure of Idealism in the Ironworks. Detailed the grocery struggle. The safety issues in the dark plazas. The impossibility of trade work without vehicle access. The ableism inherent in assuming everyone can bike or walk miles. Admitted that the traffic didn't evaporate, it just choked the poor. Submitted report to director. He called me in the next day. He looked surprised. I expected you to defend your thesis, he said. Told him I was wrong, that we were practicing green colonialism, imposing our lifestyle values on a community that couldn't support them. Director nodded. Good. Now you're ready to actually work. We are redesigning phase 2. And you are going to go apologize to the community leaders. Organized a meeting with the local business association. Kowalski, the mechanic, was there. Maria, the nurse, was there. Walked in. Didn't bring slides, didn't bring charts about global warming, just stood there. I said, I lived here for 6 weeks. I couldn't get groceries. I couldn't do laundry. I got sick and couldn't get a ride. I understand now why you were angry. Room was silent. Kowalski crossed his arms. So, what are you going to do about it? I laid out the new plan. Restoring parking zones for commercial vehicles during day hours. Widening the arterial road back to 2 lanes to clear the gridlock. Keeping the bike lanes but moving them to side streets where they wouldn't block commerce. Adding dedicated loading zones for every block. Improving lighting in the plazas and opening them to cars at night for safety. Adding covered, heated bus shelters. It wasn't the radical eco-utopia I had dreamed of. It was a compromise. It was a working city. Kowalski looked at the map. This we can work with. Maria asked about the bus stops. Promised her they would be prioritized. The tension in the room broke. For the first time, we were collaborating, not fighting. 3 years later, the Ironworks is thriving. Not as a gentrified hipster haven, but as a mixed-use district. The mechanic shop reopened, the traffic flows. The bike lanes on the side streets are used by kids and commuters, but the trucks can still deliver. Air quality actually improved because the idling traffic jams are gone. I received an award from the Urban Design Institute, not for sustainability but for community-centric adaptive reuse. Giving a speech at the ceremony, saw young students in the audience, bright-eyed, idealistic, holding sketches of car-free megacities. Felt a pang of sympathy. I was them. Started my speech. Don't design for the world you want, design for the people who live in the world you have. Sustainability that excludes the working class isn't sustainable. It's just gardening for the rich. Saw some professors in the back frowning. They didn't like that. They wanted the purity of the theory. But I knew the reality of the wet paper bag breaking in the rain. 5 years later, husband and I moved, not to the Ironworks, but to a mixed neighborhood. We have 1 car. We bike when we can. But when I see a plumber double park to fix a leak, I don't get mad anymore. I see the ecosystem of the city. Met with a new junior planner at the firm. He was proposing banning all delivery vans in downtown, replacing them with drones. He had the same arrogant gleam in his eye I used to have. Asked him, "Have you ever delivered a refrigerator by drone?" He looked confused. "No, that's an engineering detail." Smiled. "Pack your bags, kid. I'm sending you to work on a delivery truck for a week." He looked horrified. "But I have a master's degree." "Exactly," I said. "That's your handicap. You need to unlearn it." Current reflection 8 years after the Ironworks project. I still fight for green cities. But now I fight for resilient cities. Cities that handle the messiness of real life. My male privilege moment was realizing my educational privilege and mobility privilege. I thought I was saving the planet. I was just making life harder for people who are already struggling. The most sustainable thing you can do is listen to the guy who fixes your car. He knows how the city actually works better than any simulation model. That's my story about urban planning and eating humble pie. And finally, understanding that a city without cars is useless if it's also a city without people. Drifting away from the radical war on cars Twitter circles. Found them toxic. They celebrate when a grandmother can't drive to church because one less car. They cheer when a small business closes because it didn't adapt. Realize that ideology without empathy is just cruelty with a slogan. 10 years later. The Ironworks project is cited in textbooks now. Case study in compromise urbanism. I teach a guest lecture at my old university. Title: The Friction of Reality. I force students to plan a grocery run for a family of 4 using only public transit in a rainstorm. Half of them fail the assignment. They complain it's too hard. I tell them, that's the point. If you can't design for the hard days, you don't deserve to design the city. Received a letter from Maria, the nurse. She retired. Thanked me for the covered bus stops, said they saved her during the winter. That letter meant more to me than the design awards. It sits framed on my desk, next to a picture of me standing in the rain holding a broken bag of milk. A reminder. Never forget the broken milk. Never forget who you build for. End of story.